Welcome to OOO, an out of ordinary podcast where we dig deep into case studies and the nitty gritty of Web3 marketing. You'll find here all the amazing people that are building Web3, so stick to us as we address their marketing secrets and learn how to build amazing products and brands. Hello everyone, I'm Alex, your fellow Web3 marketer and the host Not of Ordinary podcast. This is episode 57. I've been MAA for last 2 months, but there's a reason to that. I'm launching a community for all you Web3 marketers to get resources, MAA, tickets to events, and more. So bear with me. And if you don't already follow me on Twitter or you're not subscribed to this podcast, please do it now. So talking about resources, OOO is an official media partner to ETH Warsaw happening 5th to 8th of September. If you want to learn more about it or get a ticket with a discount code for the OOO community, of course, I will leave links in the description of the episode. Also, as I'm always looking for resources, I partner up with Growth Stories, a weekly email specially designed for marketers in Web3. So if you want to learn more about it or subscribe, you can find the link below. Now, let me introduce you to my guest. Martin is growth lead at Maple Finance and Syrup, an institutional DeFi ecosystem with $350 plus million in TVL, with $4 billion plus in loans issued and thousands of capital allocators earning institutional yield. Martin is responsible for growth initiatives across the board, which includes marketing, partnerships, user acquisition, and retention. Hi, Martin. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being with me today. I'm super excited about our conversation because I feel like you have a lot of lessons to share with what you're doing at Syrup. And to kind of kick it off, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into Web3?
For sure. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's really exciting to be here and really cool to see what you're doing for the space, helping marketers and building a community. I got into Web3 in 2015, just personally. And in 2017, obviously during the bull market, went to New York, met with a lot of people in the space. I really started seeing this is going to take off, started understanding DeFi. I was kind of looking for a job. And then in 2022, joined Maple because I was really passionate about institutional finance as well as DeFi. And Maple is really at the intersection of it.
And that's it?
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, and then, I joined Maple kind of on the marketing side. So I was in governance, essentially, just, doing proposals and things like that. And then moved into an operations role because the bear market hit, right? During a bear market, you typically need less marketing. And now recently stepped up as head of growth, just leading all of our growth efforts, doing partnerships, basically being responsible for getting our TVL to $1 billion.
This sounds quite exciting, and congrats for taking a new role. And for those listening, can you maybe tell us a bit about what Maple is doing?
For sure. Yeah, so we are. I mean, I'm sure everybody knows Aave, which is basically over collateralized lending. Right, you can take out, you can post collateral, take out loans to do looping or lever up or buy other assets, and then obviously lenders can earn yield on their assets, right? So they can deposit assets and earn yield. Now, what Maple does is we are institutional DeFi, so like an institutional version of Aave, where all of our borrowers are institutions. We underwrite their balance sheets, we review their financials, and on the lender side, we provide yield opportunities for accredited investors. And we structure different opportunities. So we have opportunities ranging from 5% for cash management, which is super low risk, T-bills, all the way to 12% on just Bitcoin-backed lending, Ethereum-backed lending, as well as a 20% pool that does some more sophisticated strategies, doing SOL-backed lending, staking the SOL. So we have basically a full suite of products. And with all of that, we're able to consistently have higher yields than other platforms in DeFi. So in the past year, we have outperformed Aave and Maker and similar platforms by about 5% consistently.
What were your main struggles during the bear market, and how did you guys make it through this period? Because you were telling me you switched roles, and I know for sure it's been a tough 2 years for a lot of people.
For sure. Yeah, so during the previous cycle, we went all the way to $1 billion in TVL, and then we basically went to zero afterwards. So it was extremely difficult. we were in January 2023. We basically had no money on the platform. We had no real opportunities for people to deploy into. And then we launched the new RWA pool, accrue receivables, which was essentially, real world receivables, was paying like 9% interest. And we just had to turn every single stone, right? So we had to send thousands of emails every month, like Telegram DMs, LinkedIn messages, warm interest, just anything we could do to raise capital. We did, right? So we tried every single tactic, method that's in the book. And in the end, we managed to get over the summer. So in 6 months, we got to like 30 million in TVL. And then, we learned a lot of things that worked, and we continued doing those. And now we scaled up to a much larger platform. So it was really, we basically had no product, no users, no product market fit. People didn't want to pick up the phone to talk to us. And it was just a hard grind to find that one user that would, right? And then that one user would lead to 2 users, would lead to 3 users. And over time, has led to the platform we have right now.
What kind of growth strategies have you implemented over the past 2 years? Like you mentioned, a lot of warm intros and so on, but what else have you used that you think it worked?
For sure. That's a great one. So basically what we see, the things that we've seen work really well is once there you have a lead, right, that found you in some way, right? It could be a referral, it could be somebody who just saw you on social media, it could be somebody who saw you on CoinMarketCap, right? Like wherever they saw you. Just make sure that you stay in front of them consistently every single week, right? So once somebody is in your funnel, you just keep hitting them with content. So that's marketing emails, that's personal messages, that's meetings, LinkedIn messages, Telegram messages, right? Like every single tool that you have as a marketer, you just deploy for people in your pipeline. And what we have seen is that for many users, it took 9 months, 12 months to convert, but in the end they did, right? And we still have a lot of those right now in the system that haven't converted yet, but that will convert over the next 3, 6, 12 months. So I think that's number one, is just every single lead that you have in your CRM or in your contact list, just keep hitting them consistently on a weekly basis. With unique content, right? Like don't send the same message every week, but it should be unique content, interesting stuff. It could be like thought leadership, product updates, growth, like anything that's interesting. So that's number one. And then how do you, that's like we think about it as conversion, right? So we track all of our conversion rates based upon all these different metrics. We're obsessed with that. And that's our the core focus. Then the other one is once you have customers, it's the easiest to get upsizes from them, right? For growth. So once you have a couple customers, just keep hammering them as well with everything under the sun. And they will start giving you warm intros. Also ask for warm intros, right? It's like, hey, do you know anyone that could benefit from this product? We have done referral programs as well. Haven't really seen that be successful. It's really hard to pull it off. Crypto tends to be an industry that is very much driven by, trust and relationships and things like that. A lot of people don't think it's cool to get fees. What we have seen in the institutional side, I'm sure that there's other products, maybe more retail focused, where it works really well. We have found some success with it, but not as much as we would have hoped. And then the other thing is top of funnel eyeballs, right? How do you get as many eyeballs as possible? So what we have done there is you want to own your channels. You want to be in control of your destiny, right? So of course you can do partnerships or pay KOLs or all that stuff. We have done that. We basically haven't really done that because you don't really control your own destiny, right? You're always dependent on somebody else that is just a mercenary to promote your product. So we have really tried to build up our own channels, build up our email list. We have private Telegram channels where we inform, keep lenders informed. We just add everybody in there that could be interested and keep them informed. Obviously a Twitter presence, right? So we're very active on Twitter, 3 to 5 posts per day. And every post gets a couple new views and increases top of funnel. And obviously you have all the conferences and in-person events and things like that.
I actually have a couple of questions based on what Corey just told me. So I'm going to ask that before I forget.
For sure.
One of them is like, what kind of tools have you used and found successful to track your metrics? And I'm asking this because this is a question that is being asked quite a lot by my audience, for pretty much every speaker that I have. So I would be curious to see, to hear from you as well.
For sure. Yeah, so I would say like one thing that differentiates us is that we actually collect emails, right? So we have a traditional HubSpot CRM where we basically track everything. And then we marry it with all the on-chain data. So we have like wallet addresses of users or applicants. And then we have it like a Tableau dashboard where we track, other assets that users are using, obviously everything to do with Maple, right? All the interactions, as well as then all of the off-chain data, which is like which emails do they open, like whenever we have meetings with them, all those things. That's more like traditional data to track your conversion rates. We have deals for every client and track the timeline of converting, the quantities, touch points. We manage that meticulously on a week-to-week basis. And then we also use a mixed panel for web app data. So like which buttons are people clicking, like where are people coming from. We obviously have tracking links, right, in all the different comps that we use to see, like what is working and what is not working. And we also used wallet applications like Arkham and Nansen to just see like what type of profile are our users, what are other products they're deploying in, where are they coming from, right? So recently we launched a big campaign to essentially compare our product to Aave. So we want to see, is that landing, right? And we are starting to see a lot of people redeem their Aave positions and deposit them into Maple or Syrup, which then obviously shows the success. So you can see everything on chain, really. And what I would recommend is just to keep it extremely simple. Like it's very easy to get lost in the data, right? But you just want to know like where do people come from, and then just have like a various, like 3 stages of conversion and just measure like how they're converting through that, and then just find cohorts that convert, and then just focus on that, right? Like it's very easy to get lost in like 100,000 different things. You can focus on like the whole world, every single user, but just like pick a niche, focus on that user, and just convert them as hard as you can.
What was your North Star, let's say, when it comes to like numbers? Because like, as you said, like, I think like a lot of these platforms, first of all, like make numbers, like they're like, oh, we should show you this and this and this. And then like, especially as a marketer and especially as somebody who hasn't necessarily done growth all their life, I think it's very hard to like keep read through all of that, especially if you don't have like a easy to read dashboard. But at the same time, I think like being under all this pressure of numbers, you always like feel the urge to look at everything and anything at the same time. So like, what was your North Star?
For sure. That's a great question. And honestly, it changed quarter over quarter. So basically like every quarter we have like a new North Star. And the way it works is, sometimes we had a conversion problem, right? So we actually had a lot of people coming in, but they just weren't becoming users. So then we just had an intense quarter of just being obsessed with conversion. So for example, Q2 and Q3 of last year, we started our conversion rate with 10%, and then we boosted it all the way to 35% by just making the process just extremely frictionless, right? Just taking away and increasing, adding our USPs, like, doing a way better job at selling. So that was that focus. But then later on, we were like, okay, we have this amazing conversion machine. Now, we have a top of funnel problem, right? Like we don't have enough qualified leads. So then we became insanely focused on qualified leads, like attracting qualified leads. And we tripled the qualified leads we generated in a quarter. But then we noticed that the conversion rate dropped a bit, right? So that's what I would generally say is just pick something like you focus on and just like focus on that, because you cannot focus on everything, right? So just focus on one side of like, is it qualified leads, is it conversion, like whatever the metric is, and just do that, and don't try to optimize too much for keeping everything in check, because you can't, right? You don't have the time.
For sure. And the last question within this sort of questions, let's say, is like, do you think the referral program didn't work for you just because it was like more B2B? And I think like it's just a wild guess right now. So maybe you tell me if it's true or not. But for B2C, like people like are really willing to refer. Whereas for institutional or like B2B, they're like more willing to do a warm intro because money is not as important, and then, like maybe trust is more important for them.
For sure. I think that is spot on actually. We tried it twice. The first time we had basically zero success. And it was indeed B2B. So now the second time we are currently trying it again. So we're actually going through a campaign like literally today and this week. And so far we have already seen a lot more success with it in just this very short period of time that we launched it. So we already got a new user from it and a couple of really strong leads. So I do think that we are starting to crack the nut right now on how to do it well. And I do think, indeed, to your point, it's very much aligned with this idea of doing it more B2C. And B2C doesn't mean you do it to, a lot of consumer always sounds like it's people with like small bags, right? But it's also just, it could also be referral programs among whales and things like that, right?
Sure. Can you maybe tell us a bit about like the growth strategy that helped Maple achieve $250 million in TVL?
For sure. Yeah, in the meantime, it's actually 350, so it has grown a lot in the last weeks. So what has really helped us? So I think it's a lot of the stuff that we just went through, for sure. I would say the most underappreciated thing, I think, in general in growth marketing is it all starts with a product that needs to be fantastic. So you can be the best marketer in the world, but if your product sucks, like, you're not going to be able to scale it. So that would be just a piece of advice for everybody: is like, just pick the right product. It's going to make your life so much easier. Like, the product we have to sell is like the best product in the industry, in my mind, right? Like, I believe that 100%. And it is objectively true for a lot of people, like not for everybody, but for a lot of users it is. So that's really where it starts. And then as a marketer, you just have to privilege to bring it to market, right? And to sell it, essentially. And that is also where I found the challenge is, you can have the best product in the world, but if you don't put it in the right way in the market, like, people are just not going to know about it and they're not going to understand it. So that's, for example, with Syrup, is we launched a new product to market, right, in June. And basically, when we started, we thought that drips were points. So we have like a points program. It's called drips. We thought that was going to be the main driver for users, right? Because points is like, people love points. So we really focused on points in all of our marketing. And it was like front and center. And then we just noticed that it wasn't really catching on. So we figured out, people don't really care about points anymore. And then we really started to think, okay, how can we actually market this product? Like, how can we sell this product, right? In just the purest way possible. And then we came up to this idea of consistent high yield in DeFi, right? And then we started using that. And that started resonating really well, because our benefit is that we have consistency in our yield, right? It's not like Aave that like fluctuates. So, okay, we have consistency and we have high yield, right? It's much higher than other protocols. Okay, so it's consistent high yield. And then, now it's starting to land with people, right? So we're starting to see that mentioned by others on Twitter. And this whole tagline is like starting to resonate. So how can you describe your product in like 3 words, 4 words, and just have people understand it? Like, it covers a pain point, right? A lot of people in DeFi, their main struggle is yields are like shooting all over the place. You deposit one day into some yield farm and it's 50%, and the next day you come and it's like 1%, right? That's a big struggle people have, especially our target group. Like, our target group is like DeFi savvy users, right? That have 10K plus in stables to deploy. So know your user base, understand your product, and just sell it in a very simple way possible, and experiment too, because you don't know what's going to land initially. So just try different things. But yeah, you have the attention of somebody for 3 seconds. So you need to get across what your product is.
I was thinking about the chat I had yesterday with somebody who was also talking about product, and he was mentioning that, like, a lot of the users need to see your name like several times, and that's exactly what I was thinking about. Like when you were mentioning that, because you were talking about like how long it took to convert some of these leads, and probably because they've seen your face, or like they've seen you in their faces like so many times. Probably they're like, okay, now we want to work with them. Like we're convinced.
Exactly. So I would say indeed name plus tagline, right? Of like what do you offer?
How do you see the marketing as part of the distribution strategy at Maple?
For sure. That's a great question. So I kind of think about it in 4 buckets. So we have marketing, and then we have distribution, and then we have conversion, and then we have customer success. So basically marketing, the way I think about marketing is eyeballs, right? The North Star is eyeballs. Then distribution is like, what are the products we can launch, right? How can we increase the number of possible users? Like what are ways that people can access those products, right? So integrations, partnerships, things like that. And then conversion is like, once they're in the pipeline, how do we convert them? And then customer success, obviously, is, like self-explanatory. So yeah, marketing is just eyeballs, right? How can we get as many eyeballs as possible? And yeah, that's really the way I think about it.
What was the initial state of the conversion funnel? Because like initially when I spoke to you, you mentioned that a couple of minutes ago as well. And what steps did you take to improve it?
For sure. That's a great question. So indeed, it started at 10%, then it went to 35%, which was a massive result. Like we didn't expect we could get it that high, right? The goal internally was like 25%. So what did we do to improve it? So I would say the main thing is just grind, just hard grind. So instead of getting in front of somebody twice, like we got in front of somebody 50 times, right? So like that was number one. It's just amp it up. Like if you think it's too much, it's probably not too much. I've never had somebody ping me. Sorry, I have had it happen, but very limited. Very rarely somebody pinged us and said, hey, please, like, stop emailing me. Like, it's too much, right? It happens maybe 3 times, and we have done this to thousands and thousands and thousands of people, right? So I would say that was the main thing that we have seen really work. Is just amp it up on every single dimension. And then the next one is just start doing A/B testing, right? And so what we did is we tried 2 different emails. For example, so when somebody came in the funnel, qualified lead, okay, which email do you put in front of them? So one email was very corporate, institutional, and just very simple and basic to the point, essentially. And then one email was very casual and friendly and as if it was like a person, right, speaking. And, we saw that the casual approach worked way better. So then we started doubling down on that, right? And we started doing more of that. And we started to incorporate calls with people. So having personal calls and for somebody to see your face. And once somebody has seen your face and has, spoken with you and you won their trust, they were like 5 to 10 times more likely to deposit, right? So then we also saw that certain geographies were starting to outperform. So we really started to focus on those geographies and attract more leads from those geographies, right? Because just do what works. Like, don't try to do stuff that doesn't work and fix that. Just keep doing what works and iterating on that and getting it to work even better, right? So there's one thing that always makes me laugh is a lot of people are like, oh, we're going to bring the next 100 million users on crypto, right? And I'm like, dude, that is not the way to think about things. Think about the next user, the next 10 users, the next 100 users, right? And then you kind of scale it up. That's the way you find product market fit. And we are obviously in the early phases, right? I don't have all the answers for sure. We are learning every single day, but this is just what I can tell from experience is just focus on the next user and not on the next 100 million.
I feel like this is a discussion that I said at absolutely every event that I go to, at every panel, and everybody talks about that. And instead of thinking about proper strategies, everybody's kind of shilling their product. So
right.
I want to see a strategy. I want to see something that of course everybody needs to contribute to that, but what would be an overall strategy? What's your opinion on that actually?
For sure. Yeah. So it's I'm not a massive believer in strategies, like I'm a very big believer in like strategizing, right? And creating some sort of like strategic plan, but like bullet points, right? So like we make strategic plans in bullet points, and we iterate quickly on them, because it's very and then so the way we work is we work in like our operational rhythm is 2 week cycles. So every 2 weeks we plan like a cycle. Every cycle we keep doing stuff that we have always done. We take stuff out that hasn't worked, right, from previous cycles, and then we add some new stuff in the cycle, right? So recently, for example, we started experimenting with DBank and Ethermail. It's like 2 new distribution channels. This cycle, we're going to experiment with Forecaster and start using that as an example. So, and then we take out stuff that hasn't worked, right? And then the stuff we take out at the end of every cycle, we basically do a retro and we check, okay, what hasn't worked, and we cut that out. So that is like our operational rhythm. Then in regards to strategies, it's really the main thing we do is just look at our data, see what worked, and try to scale that up. So, for example, end of last year, we had this challenge of how are we going to grow qualified leads, right? How are we going to triple that? And basically what we did is we just looked, okay, where do our current leads actually come from? Like we never really looked at that before. Like we were just so obsessed with conversion that we just looked, okay, somebody is in, okay, how do we convert them, right? But we never really thought, okay, where did it actually come from? So we started mapping. So for every single customer we had, we mapped out where did they actually come from, right? Which took us a couple of days. And then we did that, and then we saw that 1/3 of our customers were just sort of like known parties, right? Somebody we met at a conference 2 years ago that just converted, or just somebody that we knew personally, or for example, if you would become a user, right? Like I would have known you and you can become a user. That was like 1/3. The other third was warm intros, so like referrals, but just warm intros, right? And not through a referral program. And then the other third was just random inbounds. Like we didn't really, they could have come from Twitter, they could have come from like a webinar, they could have come from sources like that, right? From Dune or Token Terminal, or like whatever source it was. We bucket those as inbounds. And then we're like, okay, and then we saw where we found success, right? So we saw some channels basically yielded us no users. And then we're like, okay, we have to drop all those things out, right? Just focus on the ones that do create users. And then we started focusing on those and started scaling up our presence there, and that then generated those users. So yeah, I think strategy is important to make it very data focused and iterate quickly. And if you don't have any of those things, what I would recommend is speak to experts. So, for example, one thing right now that we're struggling with is Asia, expanding into Asia. We have a very big presence in Europe and North America. Asia is probably 15% or so of the platform. Only recently that we started getting some like clients there, and now we want to scale that up, right? How do we expand in Asia? So don't have all the answers internally. Like we don't have all the data for that internally to make a strategy for that. So what we did is we spoke to every single person we knew in Asia that we thought had like some type of like opinion to share, right? And in the end, we spoke with about 15 people, and now we have like a really solid Asia plan. Asia strategy that we're implementing as of this week and for the next quarter, which obviously involves token 2049. So, and then I also figure out Asia is not just one jurisdiction. Like it's there's like so many differences between all these countries. So I think that's important too. It's just gather feedback from like friendlies.
I think like customer interviews are still not used enough, not either properly or enough or both in Web3. And I really like the fact that you guys have like took this as one of your approaches to define the strategy. One of my other questions was like, how do you guys balance? Because from what I know, you have like two target audiences, and like you've mentioned, like some of the strategies that have worked. But I was wondering, like, how do you balance attracting institutional versus individual accredited investors? and what are some strategies that worked for some and not for others, or and yeah, I wanted to know like what can you share when it comes to that?
For sure. That's a great question. I would say in general, you could say our audience is like financially savvy, right? So that's both for the individual side as well as the institutional side. And those are generally the folks that we have been good at attracting. So we're not really good at attracting, like other profile DeFi users, right? That just have like different interests. So we have data rooms with all documentation. Like we are very institutional. Like we provide updates after like big market events. We have like decks and like due diligence packages and like a lot of things that are very boring for the average individual. And they work well for both audiences. So I would say the only audience that we really have cracked is the institutional / financially savvy audience. The audience that we have not cracked is the more, let's say the meme coin or NFT community or things like that. Which,
Maybe your communication is not degen enough.
Exactly. Exactly. So we actually recently launched like Semi Syrup, which is like this meme account, right? We have some success there, but we haven't quite cracked the code. But even that is for financially savvy people because we reference, financial movies like Wall Street and Margin Call and, these type of things, right? So it's like, we don't like, that's our audience, right? And there's a lot of growth in that audience. So we will keep focusing on that audience. And I don't want to spread our resources too thin and focus on other audiences, although I love those audiences, obviously, and I think they're great. Like I'm a fan of meme coins, but, I didn't quite speak the language. I'm not degen enough.
Fair. Can you maybe share some campaigns or initiatives that had a significant impact on your growth? You guys have experimented quite a lot.
For sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, it has mainly been, like our campaigns have mainly been centered around like new products, like for example, syrup, like the syrup launch. So the campaign, for example, we did is like a big trips, points campaign for season 1, which to your point, like we actually haven't seen like, we didn't see that to be quite successful. Like people really loved the product. So we pivoted, really made it product focused. So that worked well. I would say the Aave comparison campaign, like that has been really successful, comparing ourselves to Aave and really getting that point across. So I would say if you would generalize that, it's just what is the biggest product in the space, right? So let's say you're launching a new exchange. It's like, okay, how are you better than Binance, right? And just comparing yourself to Binance and being like, okay, these are like the 5 ways we're better, right? And then just putting yourself in the same league. So we kind of, by the nature of how we communicate, we try to put ourselves in the same league as Aave, which obviously we're not. If you look at TVL, I mean, they're much bigger than us, but, we try to communicate it as such, in a very respectful way because we love Aave. Like personally, I love Aave, I've used Aave. I think it's a phenomenal product, but we are different, right? In the same way that a Ferrari is a great car, but, like a Volkswagen van or like whatever car you like is also great, just for different use cases. So I think that's important. Do it respectful, with dignity. But I think if you're small, like comparing yourself to the big dogs, is a good strategy.
It's actually funny because like when you were talking about this, like I was thinking about the fact that like in Romania, for example, it's forbidden to mention the name of your competitor in any marketing campaigns that you're doing.
Oh wow, that's good to know.
So I'm not so sure like if what's the legislation in other countries as well, but like I know for sure like Web3 has no rules, so you can definitely do a lot of the things. Like I love the fact that you put yourself like in the same league with like the bigger dogs, let's say, but at the same time, like I think it kind of shows that it's still the Wild West, that you can do pretty much anything as long as you mentioned, like you do it in a very respectful way and like you don't bash like your competitors.
For sure, yeah, and it's also truthful, right? So it's all data, right? Like we show the data, we show the relative performance, we show the benefits of Aave versus the benefits of maple syrup. So it's it's like don't make stuff up, but do it for free. But yeah, that's funny. I didn't know it was forbidden in Romania.
At least from what I remember, but from what I know, yeah, you cannot mention the name of your competitors. Like you can say we are the best detergent on the market or whatever, but you cannot say we're better than, I don't know, Ariel or Persil or whatever. Like,
Right.
who's like number one? I really have no idea. But yeah. How do you guys ensure that your marketing efforts are aligned with the overall goals at the Maple?
Great one. So yeah, we have quarterly goals essentially. So it's like, okay, this quarter we want to get 100 million deposits in syrup, for example. And marketing is just a function then of gathering those qualified leads, right? So then we will measure, okay, how much of our business has actually come through marketing efforts, right? And how much has come through partnerships, how much has come through, whatever other channels we have. So it's very direct correlation. And then we have monthly marketing meetings where we essentially run through all those metrics to see whether we are on track to contribute to those goals.
Actually, I had another question for you, but I forgot, but I hope I'm going to remember.
Sure.
I'm going to go to something else right now. Like, how do you guys leverage partnerships and collabs to drive growth?
Yeah. So I think, this is a difficult one to crack, right? Because it's very easy to do an announcement together. It's very hard to actually do a partnership where both sides get a lot of value, which is an actual partnership, right? Like most partnerships are just one party paying the other party, which is not a partnership, right? Like that is just a supplier-customer relationship. So real partnerships. The key here, what we found is like you need to understand their business goals. Like what are they trying to achieve for their users? And then you need to have some sort of complementary product that they don't want to launch themselves for whatever strategic reason. And then you need to partner on that and make it available to their users, or vice versa, right? Make their product available to your users. So I know it's a bit abstract, but like that's basically what we found. And we are still trying to, we have had partnerships in the past. We haven't had a partnership yet that contributed, 25% of the growth or whatever, right? Like it has still been relatively small scale to date, which is also partly intentional which comes back to this idea of control your own destiny. Like I wouldn't want to have the growth of our business be dependent on a partnership, right? Because what if they pull the plug, right? Like the head of partnerships leaves, and they pull the plug, right? And then you're screwed. So always make sure you have your own distribution engine, a marketing engine that gets you 60-70% to your goals, and then the other 30-40% you can make up with partnerships, or if you like KOLs or paying DeFi research, researchers or magazines or whatever it is that is kind of like paid or not fully under your control.
You mentioned many times like a lot of numbers, and it seems like you guys are very numbers oriented and so on. You mentioned right now as well to make sure that you have like a big base of like a strong base of how you want to achieve your goals. My question is regarding like how do you guys define your metrics like quarterly, as you mentioned that, and how do you know you're not like, I don't want to call it overachiever because I don't think it's like, but I'm going to use that in lack of a better word. And what I mean here is like, how do you know you need to get to $1 billion in TVL, for example, and not 2 billion? Like, how do you make sure like you used to have like big numbers that you want to achieve, but at the same time, you also make sure that like it's something achievable or like it's as close as possible to being achievable. It's not just like some random numbers that you're inventing.
Right. Yeah. Like there's like a scientific answer to this, and then there's like an answer, like probably the truth. I would say like our founders basically, make up the numbers, and like we just, up in line and execute. like that is the truth. But, it is a bit more nuanced in the sense of like we can push back and we can back into it and things like that. But the truth of the matter is like if whatever the market turns south tomorrow and everybody leaves crypto. Like it was a nonsense number, right? Obviously, you can look at your pipeline, and you can look at other products. You can look at the kind of the trend line of scaling that you're in, and use that. So I guess but it's mainly gut feeling at this stage. Like we're not at the stage yet where like a public company where they're like, hey, we're going to grow 15% next quarter, and then they grow 15.3%, right? Because they just have like perfect forecasting of pipeline. Like we're not at that stage yet, but I would say we are able to say that we're going to grow significantly and things like that based upon what we're seeing right now. But it can always change, right? But it's my job to make sure that it doesn't change, that we keep growing.
What's your approach when it comes to customer feedback? And have you guys ever been in like in a situation in which like you had to like add something to your product or change your product because of the feedback that you were getting from your users?
Oh yeah, for sure, all the time. Yeah. So we talk with our customers, every day, and we actually have we use Slack internally, and we have a channel called Product Feedback, and on a daily basis, we're pinging feedback in there from customers, and then it gets added to the backlog. If it's a priority, obviously we fix it. Otherwise, it gets added to the backlog, and we will put it in the product roadmap. But we take that stuff extremely serious because if one user says it, it's probably true for more, right? And we ultimately, it's like super basic, but there's like your customers are like everything you have, right? Like they're paying the bills, like they're keeping your job. So you have to do everything you can to give them a good experience.
How do you guys stay ahead of the trends and ensure that you still remain competitive? Because DeFi is very competitive, and in Web3, I think like all products, they become more and more competitive as time passes.
For sure. It's a great question. I think that this is really the matter of having your eyes open and just looking at everything that's out there and trying to figure out like what is the future going to be. Talking with everybody, reading everything, understanding, technology changes, regulatory changes, user needs changes. It's just, you need to have that whole mix and just kind of keep it in your brain and then just come out with ideas, right? Like, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that. So it's not necessarily a scientific exercise of like sitting down and making a plan or anything, but it's really just having your eyes open to everything and having like collaborative discussions about it. So, for example, one thing that we decided last year was obviously RWAs was like a big trend, right? Everybody was doing RWAs, and we were like, okay, everybody's doing it. So, like, what are we really going to add to this? So we basically decided, okay, we're just going to fully focus on digital asset lending, which nobody was doing, right? So it was really a blue ocean. And that's what we did, and that's the reason we have so much success. Where other RWA protocols are struggling because there's so much competition, right? It's stifling competition. The digital asset lending space is very much a blue ocean, right? And we had that whole market for the taking. And people just didn't like it anymore because during the previous cycle, really stuff happened, right? But we looked at that and we were like, okay, this is not a physics problem, right? There's not like some law in the universe that says that this is impossible. This is just an execution problem, which we can solve. So we looked at the things that went wrong during the last cycle, and we implemented solutions for all those things, which give our users comfort right now. So a lot of people that actually got hurt in the previous cycle by Luna or Genesis or BlockFi or Celsius or whatever you name it, they are actually coming to Maple, and we are winning their trust, right? Because they see like, okay, all those things that went wrong, Maple and Syrup actually have solutions for those things, and they're doing things pretty different, which makes it scalable and reliable.
What are some, I don't want to call them exciting because I think like everything is exciting. What are some initiatives or projects that you guys are aiming to further increase your TVL? Or like, is there anything that we as marketers especially, and not just marketers, like should be paying attention to when it comes to Maple moving forward?
Yeah, so we obviously want to go multi-chain, right? Tap into more liquidity sources. There's some really, really big partnerships in the pipeline. So I'm really excited about that. Actual partnerships. And then we're launching Tether as well as an asset. So that's coming too. And then just growth, So we want to obviously continue growing, and the more we grow, the better it is for our users, right? Because the more reliable we become, so the better the product becomes.
For sure. One of the last questions, and it's something I'm asking everybody on the podcast, is like, are there any Web3 tools that you would recommend anybody to look into, or are there any books, I don't know, newsletters, any sort of resource that you think the audience would find useful?
This is a fantastic question, and honestly something that I'm looking for as well. So I would say there is like a shortage of resources and tools and everything for like Web3 marketers, right? Apart from everything we already discussed, like, all the basics, right? But yeah, like, there's things like Telegram CRMs, right, that are super helpful for mass distributing content. So we work with like Tree CRM. Then I think Ethermail is pretty helpful. Then DBank for wallet messaging is very helpful. I think still what we found honestly is the thing that just works the best is like direct LinkedIn, Telegram outreach. Like that is still a very successful method for growing top of funnel. And then just cracking Twitter, right? Being extremely consistent on Twitter. So what we do is we have like a marketing bank, we call it, where essentially we have like standard posts that just go out like on a consistent basis, right? Obviously, we change the content, right? But it's okay. On Tuesday, we have, we post something about someone who posted something about Maple, right? Like a researcher or like a VC or a user or whatever. Monday, we give updates on the latest interest rates, right? And then just every day, we have like stuff that we post. That's standard. So that's really helpful. I would say in general, marketing and distribution and everything is like very much execution, just executing stuff. And obviously Brian Armstrong, like I really love this sentence. He's like, action produces information, right? So you do stuff and you learn things and you do more stuff and you learn more things and you do more stuff and you learn more things, right? And in the end, you're going to be successful. So yeah, if you have a good product, again, that's really a precondition.
I like that we started with that and we're kind of finishing with that.
For sure.
Martin, before we wrap up this episode, where can people find you?
So Maple Finance and then SyrupFi on Twitter. And my personal Twitter is Fundonomics. Like Fundonomics.
I'm definitely going to be adding that into the description of the episode so anybody can reach out. Thank you so much for your time and congrats for everything that you're doing in Maple. And looking forward to speaking to you after you hit your goals to see like what other lessons you have to share.
For sure. Fingers crossed. Thank you a lot for having me, and it was really good to chat to you.
Speak soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to our Out of Ordinary podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to hear more content like this, then open up the podcast app and click on the follow or subscribe button. It takes less than 5 seconds and is the single best thing you can do to support the show and stay up to date to more marketing strategies that are being used in the Web3 space.